Distinguished ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to the Elephant Elephant Room, Hall 1B, day one of the Africa Energy Week 2024. Welcome back from that spectacular opening ceremony we had a couple of hours ago. Building value and promoting investment through local content is our spotlight this afternoon. And this session is sponsored by the Nigerian Content Development and Monitoring Board, Africa's regulator of local content, and of course, Nigeria's poster child of efficiency amongst government agencies. Quick, it will be straight to the point. It will be, we'll have a keynote. We'll have a keynote. Following that keynote will be a panel of experts who would take a deep dive into the conversations around the theme of this event. My name is Richmond Osuji. When local content is discussed, I get particularly excited because I like to refer to myself as a talk service provider, a first class talk service provider. The very first energy, oil, and gas event I did was a local content event long before it became okay. Yes, I was just waiting for him to arrive, and now he's here. Okay, cool. So we're going to go straight into the conversation. The keynote, as I said, following the keynote, I will invite the panel members to take center stage and do the discuss. The keynote is to be delivered by the executive secretary of the Nigerian Content Development and Monitoring Board, who is not able to join us in person because of other issues back home he's attending to. But not to worry, he has sent in the director, project certification, and authorization of that agency of government in Nigeria to speak on his behalf. I'd like to now yield the platform to Mr. Abayomi Bamidele. Mr. Bamidele, please.
I have about 10 slides to share, and I hope it will excellent. So on behalf of the Executive Secretary and CDMB, he has directed I present these slides. The title, as you know, is about building value and promoting investment through local content. Just to highlight the importance of local content, and so that people that keeps demonizing local content and seeing it as a blocker, just to try and paint the picture that that is not the case. Let's start with the definition. This definition you are seeing on this slide is from the law setting up NCDMB, section 106 to be specific. And I've deliberately slowed down just to allow you to sort of read through a bit. There are some key words or clauses that jump out from this definition. Local content is defined as the quantum of composite value added to or created in a local economy by a systematic development of capacities and capabilities through deliberate utilization of local human, material resources and services. So how do we now use local content to build value and promote investment? Based on those three clauses highlighted, I would try to delve into each of them, as follows. So let's start with the composite value added or created within an economy. This clause means that local content is composite, complementary, collaborative, and is not totalitarian. And how do we build value We do that by making sure that all participants, we make sure that we carry everybody along. It is inclusive and participatory. The key point I want to make on this slide is that local content is not about nationalization. It is not about nationalization. So if you look at the back of the law setting up local content in Nigeria, you will see the various levels stipulated there. Some are as low as 45%. So the other 55% allows for investors, for partners to come in. So if anybody is saying that Nigerian content is about blocking investors or not allowing others to participate, that is not correct. This slide is about our 10-year roadmap. We started it in 2018. And you can see the various levels of performance over the years. 26% in 2018, up to about 54% as at last year. Our goal is that by the year 2027, 70%. There's a reason we did not say 100%, because we believe we need partners, we need investors to make it happen. Yes, it's local content, but we cannot do it alone. The second bucket is about systematic development of capacities and capabilities. Various localities, various countries have their strengths and weaknesses. Some could be human, based on their population, based on the natural endowments, or the demography, or their culture, or values. There are some countries that are not interested really in 9 to 5 work. There are some countries that are interested maybe in tourism. There are some countries that are not really keen about having trophies or some, big cars and stuff. So any local content that you need to design must take care of those peculiarities to make sure it fits what is available in that country such that it can add value. And value is by their own definition, not by your own definition and you try to impose it on them. So in NCDMB, we've used local content to develop skills, facilities, and infrastructure as a sense of national pride. These are what is important to us. Maybe not the same in Ghana or Angola, but for us, jobs is very key because of our population. These are the 5 key areas we play. The first one is about supply chain. What have we done in this area? As of today, we have more than 11,000 businesses registered in our database. The reason being that Nigerians are very enterprising. So a lot of people want to form their own businesses and partake in the opportunities. In some countries, which I will not mention, this may not be the key drivers for them. They just want to be laid back, enjoy life, and you need to design the local content to suit that purpose, insofar as they are able to sort of derive value based on their own definition. The second pillar there, you see the human capacity development. As of today, we've done more than 18 million training man hours that we've delivered through various courses that we've done. And the idea is when you have a population, for you to say you want to engage them, give them employment, they must be trained. So the training that we provide are very key. We go into universities and do certain interventions to make sure that some of the curriculum, some of the facilities are top-notch. In addition to that, we also do infrastructure. As of today, we have about 8 industrial parks spread over the oil-producing areas. The reason is that we've noticed that when it comes to procurement, that is where we are really exposed. There's a lot of gap in there, a lot of things being imported. And therefore, we've created an ecosystem of industrial parks where you can incubate manufacturing, provide power, plug in and play so that people can do manufacturing in country. We also have a dockyard as part of the infrastructure target. Why is that? Our NLNG facility, they have about 25 or 30 LNG carriers. As of today, none of them is dry docked in Nigeria. So a lot of value is being taken out. So as part of our intervention is to provide that infrastructure in-house, in country, so that that can also retain some value. Funding is another one. So today we have more than $500 million. Upstairs, with also a lot of announcement from AfriExim regarding a lot of partnership they are doing. We're also into that with some local banks, BOIs to be specific, and Nexim Bank. And lastly, it's about the partnerships we are doing, in which some of the modular refineries, beyond the big ones that we're aware of, there's a lot of others that we're also partnering with regarding refining and gas processing. This is the third bucket, and I also round up because I know we have a large panel. This one is about deliberate utilization. So when you develop capacities, you must use it. Any investor that has gone to look for money from banks or elsewhere and maybe set up a fab yard and you're not able to use it, it can be very frustrating. So this third bucket is also key when it comes to adding value, promoting investment regarding local content. So there's no point that you've developed capacity and it's not used. And therefore, we need deliberate project funnel to make sure that this happens. So we utilize this to make sure that we provide jobs, empowerment, prosperity on the back of the oil and gas projects that we do. This slide is just showing you that beyond the wells and the drilling and the exploration, there are a lot of other linkages to other things that we do. So even as we're going to the rigs, they must eat. There's a medical element to it. There are vehicles, there are vessels, marine vessels, fuel supply, legal services, hotels, all linked together so that the model you are going to utilize is indeed value adding and promoting investment beyond just the oil and gas. So this is the last slide. This last slide basically is highlighting the importance of local content as a national agenda. So any entity, any country that doesn't pay attention to this, I mean, you can recall what happened during COVID when superpowers were fighting over face masks or ventilators. It can be that bad if in country you don't have an element of manufacturing. Our current president has, in March this year, rolled out about 3 presidential directives to promote investment. And we are glad in NCDMB that we've already given local content enablers to 5 projects that is going to produce more than 1 billion scof of gas per day and about 350,000 barrels of oil production. All those are lined up. So what is remaining? We need FIDs. So if NCDMB, once we finish our bid, the next thing is to have the FID. We have a lot of events currently in Nigeria, from SIPEC to NOG to PNC. We need one fully dedicated to FIDs so that all these enablers, all these efforts are not just wasted. Like NJ said upstairs, we need drill, baby, drill. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Please take your seats there. Take your seats. Just thank you. And real quick, he will be joined now by Rahul Deal, CEO Tulu Oil. Rahul, you're welcome. Ileana Ferber is the CEO of Colbury Business Development. She's on the panel. Mohamed Diop is Regional Director, Atlantic Africa, AGL. He's on the panel. There's Nilian Mulemi, CEO Petrofond. She's on the panel. There's Joseph Matan, Director of Prang and Associates in London. Abiola Lukman Lawal, Chief Executive Officer and Managing Director of Etana PLC, is on the panel. Shepo Mokoka, Chief Group Chief Operating Officer of Central Energy Fund, is there. Dr. Oluwatosin Etami, Head Commercial and Business Development of Ashrami Energy, is also on the panel. And the conversation will be driven by Vice President Upstream Solutions, S&P Global Commodity Insight, Michael Wayne. Michael, is over to you.
Super. Thank you very much for working through the names of an extensive and talented panel. And thank you, the audience, for joining us here today to discuss local content. We just had a very, very good summary of a definition of local content. So we are not going to explore that as a panel. You heard value creation, capacity utilization, inclusion. It can deliver stronger sovereignty, but it is not about nationalization. That was a very key message. What we're going to do as a panel, because there are so many of us, rather than a moderated discussion, I'm going to kick off by working around my panel and asking them not to look at the definition of local content, but to discuss the two challenges or opportunities that they perhaps focus or think about from their own expertise. And there's a lot of backgrounds on the panel. So if we can work through and just think about a couple of challenges or opportunities, things that you think can help unlock the potential of local content, that will get the ball rolling. And we hope to have time for Q&A or a very tight time frame, but if possible, we'll open up for a couple of questions. I think we'll let's go counterclockwise. Do you mind, Lillian, if I start with you?
Oh, not a problem at all. Good. Thank you very much for the floor, and thank you for AEW to grant us an opportunity to discuss this topic, which is very important. I'm from Namibia, and what the Namibian government has done to address issues of local content, covering the three areas that the keynote address has touched on, which is human capital, materials, and the participation of service companies in the industry. The first thing that we did is we set up a fund, because funding is what is very important. We do have a fund where all operators that are granted oil and gas exploration licenses negotiate funds, and they remit the funds to the Petro Fund. And the mandate, number one, is to manage the issues of human capital. How do we make sure that we have skilled human capital to participate in this sector? So we have a couple of interventions that we are running, which addresses two challenges. First is funding. The second challenge is workforce. So we do offer scholarships that cover the full value chain of the oil and gas industry, from exploration, appraisal, field development, and lately our program is also covering production. We've also collaborated with operators and service companies to offer internships, because we understand that when we are where Namibia is in terms of the stages of development, reskilling and upskilling has become important. And the best tool to do that is through internships. So we're collaborating with all players through signing MOUs to make sure that Namibians are granted an opportunity for reskilling, upskilling, and employment. We've also set up an oil and gas database where Namibians that are interested to participate in the oil and gas industry can deposit CVs, and we'll use this data as a tool for two things: internships, those that would like to recruit young people for internships, this database is a good tool. Employment, the database is also a good tool. But it's also providing us intelligence in terms of what we as a country would lack in specialized skills, so that we can start addressing those skills by collaborating with local institutions of higher learning, first for them to introduce programs that will address those gaps. But most importantly, in the short term, we can already start providing those skills by collaborating with other international training oil and gas companies. That would be my contribution for now. Thank you.
So funding and interesting there that you bring in digitalization and the gathering of intelligence and data so that you can begin to assess the effectiveness of your program. Go back to your keynote. Are we breaking this in Nigeria? Are you breaking the chicken?
March this year, like I said earlier, presidential directives. So all the framework legally required for you to operate there. Number two, gap analysis. We have our data. We know where we have issues within Nigeria. Number three, capacity building. I've said a lot about that. Number four, R&D. That there's a need for some locally developed R&Ds to sort of support what you do rather than just relying on imported technology. Number five, funding, which is, very key. And the last one, access to market or the FID. Like I said, we are pushing for FID week in Nigeria. It's very important. We are speaking to all the key stakeholders so that we can address that. But when it comes, each of these parameters, they have their opportunities and challenges. But I will just, because of time, maybe pick one or two. Legal framework is an area that I think we have some challenges. Operators see regulators as, I'm trying to be careful with the word I will use here. There's a way they just perceive regulators as trying to stop them, prevent them. And that is not the case. Rather than some of them even coming to NCDMB to ask us, you have just rolled out PD, or you have just rolled out a policy, or this section 80 of the law, what do you mean? They don't talk to us. They will engage their legal directorate or their lawyers or their consultants who most of the time read it upside down. And that's where a bit um, we see that as an area of challenge. And that's why we're using some of this platform to say NCDMB, for us to have won the number one position in the ranking of business, because in Nigeria they do see this ranking of government agencies. We've been number one 2022, number one 2023, number one so far this year. So there must be something we are doing right. So please, if you have any issue regarding local content in Nigeria, please talk directly to us rather than relying on your consultants that will just take your money. They don't talk to us and just give you slides that may be upside down. Lastly, the second part is on the indigenous operators. The indigenous operators always see that I'm already Nigerian. I don't need to comply with the law. Whereas the law applies to everybody, whether it is Nigerian owned or internationally operated. Thank you.
So thank you for that. And I'm going to open for questions in a minute. We literally will be able to have one or two questions. So please put your thinking hats on. I'm just going to stay with one theme for a minute and maybe bounce it between yourself and Nilian for a minute. When dealing with regulators, one of the things that comes up, regulators or enablers, it is sometimes the transparency within the system, or the speed at which the system goes. How are you approaching it with a nascent upstream business in Namibia? How are you approaching this?
Thank you very much, Michael, for that question, which is absolutely vital. Transparency, accountability, those are key drivers of investments. With respect to Namibia, what the government has done to ensure that drivers of local content are independent, but at the same time they are responsive, those two items. I'll give an example of the fund that I manage, which is the Petro Fund. All participators in the oil and gas in Namibia that are interested in participating and solving the conversations of local content will engage with an independent body which is not directly managed by the government. The government has participants, but also what is important is operators have a voice on the platform. And jointly between the government and operators and agencies within the government, we have a platform where we can unpack the conversation of what we can do from a local content perspective. Where funds are made available, there are systems and instruments in place to make sure that there are good reports, the funds are well audited, and the strategies to deploy those funds are jointly agreed between the participants and the government. And we have seen these two to be very successful. For instance, the fund that I manage has been in existence since independence. It's now 30 years old. And most importantly, you put in strategies for sustainability. So you're going to manage this pool of fund with the vision that it should be there for the long term and not the short term. For instance, again, as a last contribution on the subject, the funding that we receive from operators are well invested, and there is a principal decision by the board that only the interest component is deployed towards investing in strategies that will address local content. We have seen that as a tool that has worked very well to react to local content in a manner which is immediately responsive, with responsive, agile, but also it gives us a strategic focus because you are constantly interrogating what problems do we have at the moment, where is the stage of the oil and gas industry, and what is it that we can do now to react to address the emerging challenges. Thank you.
Thank you. And do you agree that, Babadi, that transparency is key?
Yes.
Transparency is key. Any questions in the audience? Oh, we have a question. You get a microphone.
Thank you. My name is Ejike Boagu. I run a small team of local content financiers out of Nigeria who have recently just moved into Namibia and South Africa. And my question is for the leader from Tulo. You know, it's for him as well as other operators. I'm curious to know. I mean, you've captured the problem, you know, very well. You know, in terms of the challenges of the entrepreneurs, you know, that make up the vast majority of the players in the value chain across the continent. Would you be willing to participate in a funding solution? You know, if there was a platform which was collecting capital, pension funds, bank financing, and deploying it in a manner that was not requiring so much collateral or over collateral, you know, and more collaborative rather than punitive. Would you be willing to participate in placing capital into that kind of platform that will make it more accessible for those contractors?
So thank you. I think it's an interesting idea. We haven't come across this before, so well done. I think congratulations, at least for for thinking about that. I think what we have done so far has been really working with local banks and looking at payment terms and things to say how do we facilitate that. Um, I think what I would say is that we always look at sort of how best we deploy capital, and if there is a better way for us to deploy capital, I think we'd certainly kind of open to that. But I I do think that you guys are looking to address a problem that's quite a serious one, and that's not specific just to Nigeria. I think it's Pan African. So again, I would say best wishes to you guys, and really well done for thinking about that.
Thank you.
Thank you. On the back of that question, and I think I mentioned it earlier during the conversation, I think that within Africa as a whole, we also need to really spend a lot more energy in terms of this collaborative effort to go after the right opportunities. I'll give you an example, which I find a very laudable model. We're all aware SPDC Shell is in the market to actually sell its onshore asset in Nigeria with SPDC. There's been a process that went through. And what I found interesting about that process is that the winners of that bid that was announced, the Renaissance Group, is a combination of about 5, 6 independent Nigerian companies. And what I see in that model is that people can collaborate and pull their resources together that allow them to be able to, over a long time period, uh, ensure potential success in terms of acquiring assets, which has been run by majors, running those assets, and also investing in those assets for long-term growth. So that's one area that I thought it would be very interesting for us to mention. We've seen how the continent had produced, particularly from the Nigerian perspective, you've seen the kind of investment that required. If you look at it from the midstream, downstream perspective, the refinery is about $20 billion. It's a massive investment. The point to make is that over a period of time, particularly in this upstream space, we need to figure a way to encourage more collaborative efforts in terms of how we go after assets and be able to put together a joint interest, which can also still be win-win over a period of time. Thank you.
Super. Well, thank you for the question. I know that we'll be hustled off the stage in a minute in order to make room for make way for the next panel. I'd like to thank my panelists for taking us on an interesting journey, which is significantly more hopeful than any previous local content panel that I've moderated. We're seeing an increased focus. We're seeing an increased focus from all participants. There's more clarity to what needs to be done, but equally we hear on the challenges that clarity could be pushed harder. We really need to frame this up, and then we need to figure out how to fund it. We've heard that the funding capability can vary from country to country, and if you think of it from a Pan-African perspective, that has two effects. One, it could introduce unintended competition, but it could equally slow things down. So looking to a much more brighter and sustainable future for a diverse and capable Africa, which is very much one of the key themes of the conference this week. Local content has much to deliver and will be a key part of the coming decades. More energy and more money. Thank you very much to the panel. Would you join me in thanking them?
Thank you very much, Mike. Thank you so much. Applause is fitting for that panel.